Have you ever wondered what it takes to turn a moment of despair into a fight for justice? A millionaire single father saw a black soldier at the bus stop and said, "You're coming with me," and took her home. The rain was beating down on the windshield of the Mercedes when James Morrison saw the lonely figure at the deserted bus stop. He wasn't the kind of person who would normally stop. He had an important meeting in 20 minutes, and his millionaire schedule didn't include spontaneous acts of charity. But something about the woman's bearing made him slam on the brakes. She stood there straight as a statue, even though she was soaked through. Her military uniform was immaculate despite the storm, her medals shining against the dark fabric. She was a soldier who had clearly just returned from somewhere far away and very dangerous. James rolled down the window. "Hey, are you going to stand there until you freeze to death?" The woman looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Thanks, sir, but I'm fine." "No, you're not." He unlocked the door. "Get in." "That's not a request." Lieutenant Diane Collins hesitated for a moment. At 32, after 3 tours in the Middle East and an impeccable military career, she had learned not to trust easily. But there was something in this man's voice, an authority that didn't come from arrogance, but from someone who knew pain. She got in the car. "James Morrison," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Lieutenant Collins." She shook his hand firmly. "Where are we going?" "Home." "My home." James watched her reflection in the rearview mirror. "You look like someone who needs a safe place to process whatever happened today." Diane closed her eyes. If he only knew. 3 hours earlier, she had been escorted off the military base where she had served for 10 years. False charges of insubordination. Career destroyed. Benefits suspended. All because she refused to keep quiet about what she had witnessed on her last assignment. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. James was silent for a moment. "Because I recognized the look of someone who has been betrayed by the very system she swore to protect." It was a strange answer coming from a man in a $200,000 Mercedes. Diane studied his profile, jaw firm, eyes focused on the road, but with a deep sadness that money couldn't hide. "Did you ever serve?" she asked. "My wife did." His voice hardened almost imperceptibly before she discovered that some enemies were the same uniform as you. The car stopped in front of a mansion that looked like something out of a magazine. Perfect lawns, huge windows, the epitome of the American dream. But Diane noticed something most people would miss. Security cameras on every corner, reinforced gates, and James checking his cell phone compulsively. A man who had everything but lived as if he were on constant alert. "Welcome to the fortress," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "My daughter will love meeting a real hero." Hero. The word echoed in Diane's mind with bitter irony. If only he knew that at that moment she was technically homeless, careerless, and had only $300 in the bank. But there was something in the way James looked at her. Not as a victim or a charity case, but as an equal. As someone who understood that some battles aren't fought on battlefields, but in boardrooms in military courts. As they walked toward the front door, Diane had no idea that she was about to enter not just a house, but the center of a storm that would test everything she believed about justice, loyalty, and the true price of courage. Could this be the turning point that changes everything? Prepare to discover that some revenge is served on fine china, and that your true enemies aren't always across the ocean. Inside the mansion, James watched Diane study every corner of the room with eyes trained to detect threats. She noticed the exits, the cameras, the blind spots, automatic military behavior that confirmed her suspicions about who this man was. "Daddy!" A soft voice came from the stairs. A 12-year-old girl appeared, her curly hair framing a face that blended the delicacy of childhood with a premature maturity in her eyes. "Emma, come meet Lieutenant Collins," James said, the pride in his voice unmistakable. Diane bent down to be at the girl's height. "You can call me Diane." "Are you a real soldier?" Emma asked, fascinated. "I was," Diane replied. The word carrying a weight that James picked up immediately. Later, while Emma watched television, James served coffee in the kitchen. Do you want to talk about what happened today? Diane hesitated, then decided she owed an explanation to those who had offered her shelter. 3 months ago, during my last mission in Afghanistan, I witnessed something I shouldn't have seen. She paused, the words weighing heavily in her throat. My commander, Colonel Bradley Mitchell, was diverting medical supplies meant for Afghan civilians. He was selling them on the black market and pocketing the profits. Soldiers under my command were dying because we didn't have enough equipment while he was financing a mansion in Virginia. James leaned forward. Did you report it? I followed the chain of command. Mitchell's second in command, Major Stevens, told me to focus on my own responsibilities. The irony in Diane's voice was cutting. 2 weeks later, during a rescue operation, 3 of my soldiers died because we lacked basic medical kits. Kits that Mitchell had sold the week before. What did you do? I documented everything. Printouts of the transactions, photos of the supplies being loaded onto civilian trucks, recordings of conversations. Diane tapped her cell phone in her pocket. When I got back to the United States, I took the evidence straight to the Pentagon. James saw the anger grow in her eyes, and they destroyed you for it. Worse, they accused me of fabricating evidence and attempting to extort a superior officer. They said I was a problem soldier with a history of insubordination, a history that miraculously appeared out of thin air. Diane laughed humorously. Within 72 hours, my 10-year career, my pension, my medical benefits gone. Is Mitchell still in command? Not only that, he was promoted to general last week. Diane's voice trembled with contained fury. Meanwhile, I'm officially homeless with $300 in the bank and a tarnished military reputation that prevents me from getting any decent job. James was silent for a long moment. Then he surprised Diane with an unexpected question. Do you still have the evidence? Everything. Backups in 5 different locations. She studied him. Why do you ask? Because you may not be the first person Mitchell silenced. And maybe. James paused, choosing his words carefully. Maybe you found someone who knows how to use that evidence the right way. Diane raised an eyebrow. What kind of business do you run, James Morrison? The kind that teaches powerful men that not every war is fought in uniform. He stood up, walking over to a shelf and removing a framed photo. This is my wife, Rebecca, or she was. The photo showed a beautiful woman in an Air Force uniform, medals gleaming on her chest, a radiant smile on her lips. She discovered that her commander was selling flight information to terrorist groups. Information that resulted in the shooting down of 3 American helicopters. James' voice hardened. When she reported it, she was charged with treason and espionage. Diane felt her stomach sink. What happened to her? Suicide. At least that's what the official report said. James put the photo away with excessive care. She called me the night before she died, saying she discovered something big, something that was going to be in the papers the next morning. They found her body at 6 o'clock in the morning. The silence between them hung heavy. After the funeral, James continued, I spent every penny I had investigating her death. I uncovered a network of corruption that went all the way to the top of the military hierarchy. But evidence isn't enough when the judges are in on it, too. So, you gave up. James smiled, but there was no humor in that smile. I didn't give up. I changed my strategy. I spent the last 5 years building a military technology empire, billion-dollar contracts with the Pentagon, relationships with senators, generals, journalists. He looked directly at Diane. Sometimes to beat the system, you have to become bigger than it. Diane processed the information. You're saying that? I'm saying that maybe it's time to teach General Mitchell a lesson about underestimating people he considers disposable. At that moment, Diane's cell phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Diane Collins. You should have learned to keep quiet. Some truths cost more than a career. They cost lives. A friend. James saw the blood drain from her face. Threats. They know where I am, she whispered. No, James corrected. They know where you were. Now you're under my protection. And trust me, Diane, I've learned that the best defense is a devastating offense. Diane looked at the man in front of her, seeing not just a millionaire single father, but a soldier in a different kind of war. A war fought in boardrooms and courtrooms, where revenge was served cold and calculated. Why are you doing this? She asked again. Because, James said, already picking up the laptop. Some ghosts only rest when justice finally arrives. And because something tells me you're not the type to give up easily. As he typed, the screen lit up with government contract files, military officer profiles, and a network of connections that would impress any investigator. Diane realized she hadn't stumbled into any house. She had stumbled into a command center. And for the first time in months, something inside her that had been broken began to regroup. Not in despair, but in anticipation. Mitchell had seriously underestimated who she really was. More importantly, he had completely underestimated who she had just allied herself with. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 3 days after the threat, Diane's life turned into a meticulously orchestrated bureaucratic nightmare. Her bank account was frozen under the pretext of a financial irregularities investigation. Her rented apartment, the landlord had received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. Her former military colleagues stopped returning her calls. General Mitchell wasn't just trying to silence her. He was systematically erasing her existence. He's using the classic playbook, James explained as he pored over documents in his mansion office. Social isolation, economic pressure, destruction of credibility. His wife went through the same process. Diane held an official letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They denied my request for medical assistance. They said that because I was discharged under questionable circumstances, I'm not entitled to benefits. Her voice trembled with contained anger. 10 years serving my country and now I'm treated like a criminal. Emma appeared at the door carrying a cup of hot chocolate. For you, she said shyly to Diane. Dad said you're going through a difficult time. Diane accepted the cup, touched by the kindness. Thank you, sweetheart. Mom was a soldier, too, Emma continued. Dad says women soldiers are the bravest people in the world, but not everyone understands that. After Emma left, James leaned forward. I need to show you something. He opened his laptop and navigated to an encrypted folder. For the past 5 years, I haven't just been building a company. I've been building a network. The screen showed a complex family tree of military, political, and media connections. Senators Mitchell thinks he controls, investigative journalists with a history of taking down corrupt officials, military officers who are clean and hate what men like Mitchell do to the uniform. Are you suggesting an information war? I'm suggesting strategic justice. James clicked on another file. Remember Rebecca? Before she died, she didn't just get evidence on her commander. She got evidence on an entire network, including a young major named Bradley Mitchell. Diane felt the blood drain from her face. Mitchell was involved in his wife's death. Not directly, but he was part of the scheme she uncovered. And when she threatened to expose it, James clenched his fists. Let's just say some accidents are very convenient. The next morning, an unexpected figure appeared at the door. Senator Patricia Williams, a black woman in her 50s, a former military officer known for her crusade against corruption in the Pentagon. James told me about your situation, she said bluntly, without beating around the bush. And I've known Bradley Mitchell since he was an arrogant major who thought the rules didn't apply to him. Senator, I appreciate your concern, but I don't know if, let me stop you there, Lieutenant Collins. The senator sat down, her presence commanding immediate respect. 6 months ago, my committee began an investigation into military corruption in the Middle East. We have suspicions, but we need solid evidence. You've appeared as a gift from heaven. Diane glanced at James, who nodded encouragingly. What exactly are you proposing? That we stop playing defense, the senator replied. Mitchell thinks you're just another troublesome soldier he can crush. He doesn't know he's messing with an operation that goes far beyond his petty ambitions. James opened a new folder on his computer. Over the past 3 days, while Mitchell has been playing at destroying your life, my cybersecurity team, all ex-military personnel Rebecca helped recruit before she died, has been monitoring all of his communications. The screen filled with printouts of messages, emails, and audio recordings. He's not just selling medical supplies, James continued. He's selling military intelligence to private contractors, overcharging the government, and using American soldiers as pawns in a personal enrichment scheme. That's treason on multiple levels, Diane murmured, studying the evidence. And the best part, the senator smiled with satisfaction. Tomorrow he's making a presentation to the Senate Defense Committee asking for increased funding for equipment modernization. It will be broadcast live on C-SPAN. Diane began to understand the plan. You want me to? We want you to show up at that hearing, James said, not as an accused soldier, but as the lead witness in a Senate investigation with backup from senators, irrefutable evidence, and national media coverage. Mitchell thinks he silenced you, the senator added. Imagine the look on his face when you stand up in that audience, microphone in hand, with the entire country watching. That night, Diane couldn't sleep. She paced around the house, processing the magnitude of what was about to happen. James found her in the kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nervous, not nervous, determined, she turned to him. You've been planning this for 5 years. I've been preparing for the right moment for 5 years. You're the right moment, Diane. Rebecca would be proud. Diane touched the cell phone where she kept her original evidence. He really thought that by destroying me, he would destroy the truth. Men like Mitchell always make the same mistake, James said softly. They confuse silencing the messenger with silencing the message. The next morning, as Mitchell prepared for his triumphant presentation to Congress, completely unaware of what was about to happen, Diane adjusted the lapel microphone that the senator's staff had provided. Remember, James said on the phone, coordinating with his tech team, the moment she identifies herself, send the files to all press contacts simultaneously. I want it to be too late for damage control by the time Mitchell realizes what's happening. Diane looked in the car mirror on her way to the Capitol. In 48 hours, she had gone from a homeless, disgraced soldier to the centerpiece of an operation that could change the entire system of military corruption. But as the Capitol loomed majestically against the blue Washington sky, one question hammered at her mind. Had Mitchell really underestimated the situation that much? Or was there something they didn't know yet? Because men who rise to the rank of general rarely survive that long by being completely naive about their enemies. That's when his cell phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. I see you found some powerful friends, Diane. Too bad they don't know the whole truth about you. See you at the hearing. Someone who knows your darkest secret. Diane's blood ran cold. Mitchell had discovered something that neither James nor the senator knew about. Something from her past that could destroy not only her, but everyone who dared to support her. The congressional hearing room was packed with C-SPAN cameras broadcasting live when General Bradley Mitchell took the podium, adjusting his impeccable uniform laden with medals. His presentation on military equipment modernization was about to secure billion-dollar contracts and another opportunity to embezzle millions. Honorable senators, he began in a confident voice. Our proposal aims to protect our soldiers with cutting-edge technology. In the audience, Diane took a deep breath. James whispered to her side. Remember, when Senator Williams gives the signal, stand up and identify yourself. The rest is in our hands. Mitchell continued his polished presentation, completely oblivious to what was coming. Unfortunately, we face problematic soldiers who spread misinformation about our operations, trying to tarnish the reputation of dedicated officers. That's when Senator Williams leaned toward the microphone. General Mitchell, before you continue, I would like to introduce a special witness who has relevant information about your operations. Mitchell's smile faltered for a split second. Senator, I don't understand. Lieutenant Diane Collins, please introduce yourself. Diane rose slowly and the blood drained from Mitchell's face as if he had seen a ghost. She walked to the audience microphone, each step echoing in the sudden silence of the room. Good morning, General Mitchell, Diane said, her voice clear and firm. Surprised to see me? Mitchell tried to regain his composure. Senator Williams, this woman was discharged from military service for fabricating evidence and it is precisely those allegations that she is here to testify about, the senator interrupted. But first, I would like the public to know what Lieutenant Collins really discovered in Afghanistan. James, sitting strategically at the back of the room, discreetly activated his laptop. In real time, files began to be sent to dozens of journalists in attendance. General Mitchell, Diane continued, do you remember this conversation? She held up a small audio device, a recording from March 15 at 2:30 p.m. in your command tent. Mitchell's voice echoed through the speakers. Colonel Stevens, those medical supplies are worth $50,000 on the black market. Send them to the usual contact and transfer my share to the Cayman Islands account. The room exploded in murmurs. Mitchell jumped out of his chair. This is a fake, a montage. Interesting, Senator Williams said calmly. Because we also have these photographs. The screens in the room filled with images of Mitchell supervising the loading of medical supplies onto civilian trucks. And these bank records, James added, standing up and walking to the front, showing transfers of $470,000 to the general's personal accounts over the last 18 months. Mitchell was losing control. Who is this man? He has no authority to James Morrison, CEO of Morrison Defense Technologies, James replied with a cold smile, and the man who supplies 60% of the communication systems you've used to coordinate your illegal operations. Systems which by happy coincidence automatically record all communications for security purposes. The color drained from Mitchell's face. He realized the trap. He had used James's own technology to incriminate himself for years. Senator Mitchell stammered. I can explain. General Mitchell, Diane interrupted. 3 soldiers under my command died because you sold the medical equipment that could have saved them. Private Peterson, 22 years old. Private Williams, 24 years old. Private Rodriguez, only 19 years old. Her voice didn't waver once. They died while you were buying your 3rd house in Virginia. The silence in the room was deafening. Mitchell tried one last desperate gambit. You don't know the whole truth about her, he shouted, pointing at Diane. She killed innocent civilians during an operation. That's why she was really discharged. Diane smiled for the first time since she had entered the room. General Mitchell, thank you for bringing that up. She turned to the audience. That is exactly the lie he planted in my file after I confronted him about corruption. James activated a new screen. Here is the original report of the operation before it was altered. Lieutenant Collins saved 16 Afghan civilians during a terrorist attack, risking her own life. And here, added Senator Williams, is the recording of the order General Mitchell gave to alter that report and create the false charges against Lieutenant Collins. Mitchell's own voice echoed again. Destroy her reputation. Make up whatever you need to. She can't look like a hero when we're tearing her down. Mitchell slumped in his chair, the weight of defeat finally hitting him. All the lies, all the corruption, all the arrogance, all crumbling live on national television. General Mitchell, Diane said, stepping closer. You said that some soldiers are a problem. You're right. Soldiers who refuse to remain silent when they see officers betraying their own men are indeed a problem for people like you. The cameras captured every detail of Mitchell's humiliation. His empire of corruption, built through years of abuse of power, was crumbling in a matter of minutes. James watched with satisfaction as reporters bombarded Mitchell with questions he couldn't answer. The man who had indirectly caused Rebecca's death was finally paying the price. The hearing is adjourned, Senator Williams announced. General Mitchell, consider yourself under formal criminal investigation. As Mitchell was escorted out of the room by military police officers, he passed Diane one last time. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, he muttered under his breath. Diane stared him down. General, in 10 years, I've learned that there are 2 kinds of soldiers. Those who protect the innocent and those who protect themselves from the innocent. Today, the entire country found out which kind you are. As the doors closed behind him, Diane finally felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not revenge, but justice. The difference was that revenge would have left her empty, but justice was leaving her whole. James approached her in the hallway crowded with reporters. "How do you feel?" "Like a soldier," Diane replied simply. "For the first time in a long time, like a real soldier." But as camera flashes exploded around them and Mitchell was led away in custody, one question remained. What happens when justice finally prevails? Are some victories too big to be true? Or does the system sometimes really work when the right people come together for the right reason? 6 months after the hearing that destroyed General Mitchell's career, Diane watched from the window of her new office at the Pentagon. Officially reinstated to the armed forces with all honors restored, she now headed a new military integrity division created specifically after the Mitchell scandal made national headlines. The irony was delicious. The man who had tried to destroy her had inadvertently created her dream job. "Major Collins," James corrected, entering with coffee. Diane had been promoted 3 times in 6 months, a historic redress that became a case study in military justice. "Did you see the news about Mitchell?" James nodded grimly. Former General Bradley Mitchell had been sentenced to 20 years in prison for treason and corruption. His fortune had been confiscated to compensate the victims' families. His wife had filed for divorce, and his children had changed their last names. Even more devastating, he was serving his sentence in a military prison where corrupt former officers were not exactly popular. "He tried to call me from prison last week," Diane continued. "He said he wanted to apologize." "Did you take it?" "No. Some people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. I forgave Mitchell for my own well-being, but that doesn't mean he deserves a second of my time." Emma came running in, now 13, and radiating confidence. "Diane, Dad said you won another award." Military Integrity Award of the Year, James confirmed proudly. "3rd this year." Diane looked at the stack of letters on her desk. "I get 50 messages a week from soldiers reporting corruption. The division he indirectly created has already investigated 23 similar cases on bases across the country." The phone rang. "Major Collins, Senator Williams on line 2. "Diane, great news. The bill to protect military whistleblowers passed the Senate. Soldiers who report corruption will now have automatic legal protection." After hanging up, Diane leaned back in her chair. 2 years ago, she was homeless at a bus stop. Today, she was literally rewriting the rules to protect honest soldiers. "You know what gives me the most satisfaction," she said to James. "It's not seeing Mitchell in prison. It's knowing that no soldier will ever go through what I did. This law will protect generations." That night during dinner, Emma asked a question that summed it all up. "Diane, do you regret reporting the general?" Diane looked around the table, James smiling genuinely, Emma growing up with an unshakable sense of justice and a family built not in spite of adversity, but because of it. "Emma, the truth is an expensive luxury, but it's always worth the price. Mitchell tried to teach me that some secrets cost careers. I taught him that some silences cost souls." General Mitchell now shares a 6-foot by 9-foot cell eating food from a metal tray and counting the 20 years he has left to live. Diane Collins heads a division at the Pentagon, lives in a mansion with the family she chose, and wakes up every day protecting honest soldiers. The best revenge, she discovered, is not to stoop to your enemy's level. It's to rise so high that they become irrelevant. If you've ever faced injustices that seemed impossible to overcome, remember the truth has a strange way of finding its way into the light. Subscribe to Black Voices for more stories that prove courage always beats corruption.